So yesterday we brought you part 1 of our run through the last time every Premier League club won a major trophy. Click the link in the top right corner of the screen if you missed that, but right now it's time for part 2. Remember, we aren't classing a Community Shield as a major trophy or any league title that was at a lower level than the Premier League or the old First Division. Part 2 begins with Manchester City, whose last major trophy came in 2016. It was the final season of Manuel Pellegrini's tenure as City boss, and he capped off his time with the club with a League Cup victory, beating Liverpool in the final, winning the game 3-1 on penalties. It was a third and final trophy for Pellegrini at Man City, having previously won the Premier League and another League Cup back in 2014. The charming man was replaced by Pep Guardiola, who has yet to lift any silverware at the club, and the Spaniard will be massively disappointed if he fails to do so again this season, especially with how well his side have started the season, leading the way in the Premier League after just 7 games. Next up we've got Manchester United, whose last major honour was in the summer of this year. Jose Mourinho ended his first season in charge of the club with 2 major trophies in what was a strong season in the Cups for the club, despite an underwhelming league showing. Having first won the AFL Cup, the Red Devils went on to lift the Europa League for the first time in their history in May, beating Ajax 2-0 in the final, courtesy of goals from Paul Pogba and Henrik Mkhitaryan. The win guaranteed Champions League football this season for Man United, who had failed to qualify via the league, instead putting all their eggs in the Europa League basket. It proved to work, and it meant the club had won 3 major honours in 2 seasons after a dry spell following Sir Alex Ferguson's retirement. Up next it's Newcastle United, who last lifted a trophy back in 1969. While the Magpies have won the Championship twice recently, we aren't including second division titles, so we have to go back to the late 60s for the last time the Geordies tasted success. The Fairs Cup was a competition that ran between 1955 and 1971 and is recognised as the predecessor to the UEFA Cup, better known now as the Europa League, and although it is not part of the club's European record according to UEFA, it is recognised as a major honour by FIFA. Newcastle lifted the trophy in 1969, beating Hungarian side Újpest, probably said that wrong, 6-2 on aggregate, with Bob Moncur scoring 3 times across both games, captaining the side under the management of Joe Harvey. Next we've got Southampton, who last won a major honour in 1976. The FA Cup final in 1976 was the last time the Saints experienced major success, beating Manchester United 1-0 in the final, with Bobby Stokes scoring a winner in the 83rd minute. It was the first and only time that Southampton have won a major trophy, but they nearly changed that last season, reaching the AFL Cup final where they were beaten by their 1976 opponents Manchester United. They were also runners-up in the FA Cup back in 2003 when they were beaten by Arsenal, but did lift the Football League trophy in 2010 when they were languishing in the lower leagues, but sadly that is not a major honour, no disrespect to the clubs of League 1 and 2. Up next we've got Stoke City, and it was 1972 when they last lifted a major trophy. The Potters have only ever won 1 major honour in their history, and that was the League Cup in 1972. In front of just under 98,000 people at Wembley, Stoke beat Chelsea 2-1 thanks to goals from Terry Conroy and George Easton, scoring either side of an equaliser from Peter Osgood. Despite being the underdogs, Stoke won their first and only major trophy, having came close in 1964 when they were runners-up, as well as just missing out on an FA Cup in 2011, receiving a battering off Manchester City. Not a lot of cup history for Stoke, but at least no one's calling them a rugby club anymore. Next up we've got Swansea City, who last won a trophy in 2013. Just like Stoke and Southampton, Swansea have only ever won 1 major trophy, and they were the most recent to break their trophy duck, beating Bradford City 5-0 in the League Cup final of 2013. It was a win that really put Swansea's journey up the league into perspective, and while they'd only beaten a League 1 team in the final, sorry Bradford, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and that day will go down as one of, if not the biggest day in the club's history. There was one sour note though, when Nathan Dyer threw a strop when official penalty taker Jonathan de Guzman refused to let the winger take the spot kick, despite him being on a hat-trick. A great day for the Swans nonetheless. Up next we've got Tottenham Hotspur, who last lifted a trophy back in 2008. It's been 9 years since Tottenham tasted success, where they beat rivals Chelsea 2-1 in the final of the League Cup, with Jonathan Woodgate finding a winner in extra time, after Dimitar Berbatov had cancelled out Didier Drogba's first half free kick. After years of mediocrity, Tottenham finally looked capable of winning trophies again under Maurizio Pochettino, who has built a sensational squad that hasn't been a million miles away from a league title in the past 2 seasons, but sadly they're still being overshadowed by Arsenal in the trophy department in the past decade, during a time in which the Gunners haven't even been doing that well. Next up we've got Watford, who sadly have never won a major honour. The Hornets have been around for 136 years and have unfortunately never won a major honour, but they have been the bridesmaid a couple of times. In 1983, the club came second in the Old First Division under Graham Taylor, in a season in which Luther Blissett scored 27 league goals to win him the Golden Boot. However, his goals weren't enough to deliver the title, with Liverpool finishing above Watford by 11 points. In 1984 they came close again to a major honour, reaching the FA Cup final, but they were beaten 2-0 by Everton at Wembley after goals from Graham Sharp and Andy Gray. Up next it's West Brom, whose last major honour came back in 1968. Winners of the Old First Division back in 1920, 1966 League Cup winners and 5 times FA Cup champions, the Baggies have a lot of history behind them. But sadly it's just that, with 1968 the last time they had major success, lifting the FA Cup at Old Wembley, beating Everton by 1-0, with Jeff Astle scoring the only goal of the game 3 minutes into extra time. Nowadays, West Brom don't really look like winning any silverware, with Tony Pulis giving himself a trophy whenever he hits 40 points. And finally we've got West Ham United, whose last major trophy came in 1980. We would be saying 2006 had it not been for a wonder goal from Steven Gerrard sending the FA Cup final that year to extra time and penalties, but instead we have to go back to 1980 when West Ham last won a major trophy, picking up their third FA Cup in their history, beating Arsenal 1-0 in the final, with Sir Trevor Brooking bagging the winner for the Hammers. Since then it's been pretty dismal on the cup front for the Hammers, reaching 2 other finals, the previously mentioned 06 FA Cup final and the 1981 League Cup final, where they also were beaten by Liverpool, losing a replay 2-1. Never mind, at least they won the World Cup back in 1966. So that's the last time every Premier League club won a major trophy. Thanks for watching, let us know what you think in the comments below and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.